Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive with us. Today, we're tackling something that I know a lot of you have been asking about and wanting to dig into.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the fascinating connections between the Book of Genesis and modern scientific discoveries,
Okay.
especially when it comes to the question of how life began. You've probably noticed these little hints of what some people call scientific foreknowledge in the Bible,
Mhm.
like when Solomon describes the water cycle way before scientists figured it out, or when Job references freshwater springs at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes you wonder, right?
It really does. It raises a lot of questions about the relationship between ancient wisdom and modern science. Like, how could these ancient texts have insights that we only figured out scientifically centuries later? Is it just a coincidence, or is there something more profound going on?
Right. Like, think about the idea of the impossibility of chance. It's a concept that pops up in Genesis and in scientific discussions today. How could something as complex as a single molecule of hemoglobin, with its hundreds of precisely arranged amino acids, just appear randomly?
Right.
It just seems to defy logic. It's almost as if some kind of blueprint or a guiding force was necessary for that to happen.
It's a big debate, for sure. The idea that life arose purely by chance is something that a lot of thinkers have been wrestling with, both religious and scientific. And while evolution's happened over a very long time, which does allow for a lot of possibilities, some people argue that the sheer complexity of life, even at a cellular level, points to something more than just random mutations and natural selection.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a skyscraper by throwing bricks in the air and hoping they land in the right place.
Exactly. It just doesn't seem likely, does it?
No.
And when you consider the intricate machinery in just a single cell, the precise biochemical reactions, the DNA molecule that can replicate itself with its billions of base pairs, it makes you wonder if there's a guiding hand at work, like a cosmic architect or something.
Well, speaking of blueprints, let's look at Genesis chapter 1, specifically the significance of day 3, where we see land, seas, and vegetation appear.
Okay.
There's something fascinating about this day, even aside from its place in the creation story.
Day 3, a day of double blessing in Jewish tradition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's believed to have special significance. You can see this in how Jewish weddings are always held on Tuesdays.
Oh, I had no idea there was a connection there.
There is. It's a nice illustration of how old traditions and beliefs find their way into cultural practices. And for those who like to think about biblical prophecy, some even suggest jokingly that the rapture might happen on a Tuesday too.
Well, that would be an interesting Tuesday afternoon, wouldn't it?
It would.
But speaking of water and its significance, let's move on to the water cycle and oceanography.
Okay.
Solomon, in Ecclesiastes 1.67, gives this vivid picture of wind patterns and water moving across the earth.
Hmm.
And it's remarkably similar to how we understand these phenomena today.
It's like he peeked into a future textbook on meteorology and oceanography. That's what's so fascinating about these hints of scientific foreknowledge. We see these ancient texts reflecting observations and insights that wouldn't be scientifically validated for centuries.
It's almost like they had a deeper understanding of the natural world, a wisdom that goes beyond time and culture. And speaking of oceanography, there's this story about Matthew Fontaine Maury, a 19th century naval officer, that's really inspiring.
Oh, Maury. He's a fascinating person. What is it about him that caught your attention?
Well, he was very inspired by Psalm 8 and Isaiah 43, particularly the verses about paths in the seas.
Yeah.
These passages led him to think there must be predictable patterns and currents in the ocean, so he set out to map them.
And he ended up being called the father of oceanography because of it.
That's right. It's amazing how those biblical verses spurred such groundbreaking scientific work. It just shows how faith and reason, observation and interpretation can all work together.
He really can.
It reminds us that those two things, which are often thought to be opposed to each other, can actually complement each other. But let's switch gears a bit and look at thermodynamics and the origins of life.
Okay.
That's where those apparent conflicts can sometimes feel a bit stronger.
It's definitely a fascinating area and one that's central to our exploration of Genesis and modern science. You mentioned the idea of the impossibility of chance earlier, and thermodynamics helps explain why the idea of life spontaneously generating seems so improbable.
Okay, let's break this down. I remember learning about the laws of thermodynamics in school, but it's all kind of a blur now.
Sure.
Can you remind me what they're all about?
Well, the first law of thermodynamics is all about conservation of energy. Basically, energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed from one form to another. It's like a big cosmic bank account.
Okay.
The total amount of energy in the universe stays the same, but it can be deposited and withdrawn in different forms.
Right, like how solar energy is converted into chemical energy through photosynthesis.
Exactly. Now, the second law of thermodynamics, which is also known as the entropy law, introduces the concept of disorder or randomness.
Okay.
It says that in any closed system, the total amount of disorder will always increase over time. Think of it like a messy room.
Okay.
If you leave it alone, it just naturally gets messier.
Right.
It doesn't tidy itself up.
Yeah.
So if the universe tends toward disorder, how does that work with the incredible order and complexity we see in living things?
That's a good question. How does that work?
It is, and that's where information becomes really important. Life as we know it isn't just about matter and energy. It's also about information. You could think of DNA like a blueprint, a set of instructions for building and running a living thing.
Okay.
It's like the difference between having a pile of bricks and having a detailed architectural plan.
Right.
The bricks won't spontaneously form a house, but with the right information, you can create something amazing. And that's where the idea of the impossibility of chance becomes more convincing. The likelihood of all the necessary information for life arising spontaneously through just random processes is incredibly small. To put it in perspective, imagine a sealed jar of peanut butter that's been in your pantry for years. When you open it, you don't find any new life forms inside, right?
No, definitely not. No strange peanut butter creatures evolving in there.
Right. That's because life needs more than just matter and energy bumping into each other randomly.
Right.
It needs information, a blueprint, a guiding principle. And this is where things start to get really interesting.
So we have the matter, we have the energy, but where does the information come from? Where does that blueprint for life come from? That seems to be the real question here.
It is. And it forces us to think about some really big possibilities. One idea that's been gaining ground, even among some scientists who aren't religious, is the anthropic principle.
Okay, I've heard that term, but I'm not entirely sure what it means. Can you explain it?
Sure. The anthropic principle is basically the observation that the universe seems to be perfectly set up for life to exist.
Okay.
It's as if the fundamental constants of physics, the laws that govern gravity, electromagnetism, and the subatomic world, are all tuned just right so that stars, planets, and life can emerge.
Wow, so you're saying it's not just that life happened by chance, but that the universe itself seems to be designed in a way that makes life possible.
That's the basic idea. And the more we learn about the universe, the more this fine-tuning becomes evident. Take the force of gravity, for instance. If it were even a little bit stronger, stars would burn out too quickly for life to have a chance to evolve. And if it were a bit weaker, stars wouldn't form at all.
It's like a cosmic Goldilocks scenario where everything has to be just right.
Exactly. And it's not just gravity. The strength of the electromagnetic force, the ratio of the electron mass to the proton mass, the cosmological constant, all these values seem to be carefully calibrated to allow for the complexity and stability needed for life.
That's incredible. What about life itself, though? We often talk about the simple cell, but something tells me it's anything but simple.
You're right. The term simple cell is misleading. Modern biology shows us a surprising amount of complexity, even within the simplest single-celled organisms.
Okay.
We're talking about intricate molecular machines, complicated signaling pathways, and a very efficient information storage and retrieval system, which is DNA.
It's amazing to think that something so small can be so complex. It's like comparing a grain of sand to a huge library.
It's a great analogy. And to make it even more amazing, cells can actually replicate themselves, passing on all that information to the next generation. It's a process that's both incredibly precise and super efficient.
But if every cell has this blueprint for life, this incredible complexity, why don't we see new organisms spontaneously appearing all the time?
That's a question that's still puzzling scientists. It suggests a level of organization and coordination that we don't fully grasp yet. Imagine an orchestra with all the musicians and instruments ready, but no conductor. You might get some random sounds, but you wouldn't have a symphony.
So there's more to life than just having the right parts. It's about how those parts are arranged and work together.
Exactly. There seems to be a higher level of organization, a guiding principle involved.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces connect. The fine-tuning of the universe, the complexity of a single cell, the idea of information as a key ingredient for life. It paints a very different picture than the random chance scenario.
It does, doesn't it? And it raises some big questions about the nature of life, the universe, and our role in it all. But before we get too philosophical, let's look at one more specific example of biological complexity that I think you'll find interesting. Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, the process that makes life on Earth possible. Let's dive in.
It's a remarkable process, and it really shows what we mean by irreducible complexity. Photosynthesis is a two-stage process, where each stage relies on the other, and both are essential for producing the energy that life needs.
All right, walk me through this intricate dance. How does sunlight turn into the building blocks of life?
Well, the first stage, called the light-dependent reactions, happens inside these little structures called chloroplasts. Inside the chloroplasts, light energy is captured by chlorophyll, the green pigment that makes plants green. This captured energy is used to split water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct.
Ah, so that's where we get our oxygen from.
Precisely. But splitting water also releases electrons, and those electrons are essential. They get energized by the captured light energy and are used to create two crucial energy carriers, which are NADPH and ATP.
Energy carriers, what do they do?
Imagine them as tiny batteries, storing the energy from sunlight in a chemical form that the plant can use. NADPH carries electrons and hydrogen ions, and ATP provides the energy to power the next stage of photosynthesis, the light-independent reactions.
So it's kind of like a relay race, with the light-dependent reactions handing off the energy to the next stage.
That's a great way to think about it. Now, in the light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle, those energy carriers are used to convert carbon dioxide from the air into glucose, a simple sugar that provides energy for the plant.
Wait, so the carbon dioxide we breathe out is actually used to make sugar?
It is. This shows the amazing connection between plants and animals. We need the oxygen they make, and they need the carbon dioxide we exhale. It's a perfect cycle of giving and taking.
It's incredible how everything fits together so well. But if photosynthesis is so complex, with all these interdependent steps, how could it just happen by chance?
That's a question that has been bothering evolutionary biologists for a long time. The intricate machinery of photosynthesis, with its precisely arranged proteins and enzymes, doesn't seem to fit with a simple step-by-step evolutionary explanation.
It's like trying to build a car by randomly throwing parts together and expecting it to run. The chances of it working are pretty slim.
Exactly. And that's what makes the idea of irreducible complexity so interesting. It suggests that certain biological systems, like photosynthesis, need all their parts to be there and working right from the start. This challenges the idea of gradual evolution through small, incremental changes.
I see how these discussions about the origins of life, the anthropic principle, and the complexity of biological systems all relate to our earlier questions about Genesis and scientific foreknowledge.
They do, don't they?
Right.
It's like both ancient wisdom and modern science are pointing towards a deeper mystery, suggesting the possibility of a guiding hand, a cosmic intelligence shaping the universe.
It's definitely a lot to think about. Speaking of food for thought, I'm curious about those hidden codes you mentioned earlier, the ones in the Torah. That seems like a whole other level of mystery.
It is. These equidistant letter sequences, or ELS, have captivated scholars and researchers for years. It involves finding hidden messages in the text by looking for patterns of letters that are spaced evenly apart.
So it's kind of like a secret language hidden in the text?
You could say that. What's fascinating is that some of these ELS seem to have information that's relevant to the text around them. For example, in the parts of Genesis that describe the creation of trees, researchers have found ELS that contain the names of different tree species.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like finding a hidden treasure map inside the text itself.
It is, and it raises a lot of interesting questions. Are these codes intentional? If so, who put them there and why? It's a very interesting mystery that continues to spark debate and wonder.
It really makes you rethink those assumptions we make about the world, about the nature of reality itself. I mean, if we're finding these unexpected connections between ancient texts and scientific discoveries and the very fabric of the universe, it kind of opens up a whole new world of possibilities, doesn't it?
It does, and it encourages us to approach these big questions with a sense of humility and wonder.
Yeah.
We might not have all the answers, and that's all right. The journey of exploration, the search for understanding, is just as important as the destination.
Yeah, it's like we're piecing together this giant cosmic puzzle, and every new discovery is another piece revealing a little more of a bigger picture. But as you said, the journey is really what makes it so exciting. And this deep dive has certainly been a journey. We've explored these amazing connections between Genesis and modern science, looking at the complexities of life, the universe, everything in between. Where do we even go from here?
I think the main takeaway is that the exploration doesn't stop here. Hopefully this deep dive has sparked some curiosity in you, a desire to keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep making those connections. The book of Genesis, with its poetic language and timeless wisdom, continues to inspire and amaze us. And science, with its constantly evolving understanding of the natural world, keeps uncovering new levels of complexity and interconnectedness.
It's like those hidden codes we were talking about, those little hints within the text. They remind us that there's always more to uncover, more to understand, more to think about. And maybe, just maybe, those deeper layers of meaning hold the keys to unlocking even bigger mysteries about the universe and our place in it.
Maybe they do. So as you go about your day, I want you to look at the world with a fresh perspective. See the beauty in a leaf, the vastness of the night sky, the wonder of life all around you, and ask yourself, what does it all mean? What connections can you make between what we've discussed today and your own experiences, your own beliefs, your own understanding of the world?
Those are great questions to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions, keep exploring the wonders of the universe and the mysteries of life.